Sometimes, it's not the world-changing innovations that shift your life, it's the quiet sound of a meow behind you. Elon Musk had just stepped out of his car, the sun barely rising behind the steel and glass headquarters of SpaceX. His mind, as usual, was already flooded with challenges, launch schedules, regulatory issues, AI safety briefings, battery optimization, tunnel delays. Each thought buzzed like static in his brain. He was used to carrying the weight of the future. But that morning, for reasons he couldn't explain, it felt heavier than usual. He was halfway to the front doors when he caught something in the corner of his eye. A blur of movement. A soundless presence. He stopped. There, at the edge of the sidewalk, sat a cat. Small. Scruffy. Its fur was dull and matted, its ribs faintly showing beneath its dusty coat. But it wasn't the cat's appearance that froze Elon in place. It was the eyes. The way they stared, unblinking, steady, like the cat knew him. Like it had been waiting. Elon blinked. Shook his head slightly. He wasn't the kind of man to stop for stray animals. He admired wildlife, sure, and had donated to animal causes. But he lived in equations, in orbits, in probabilities, not in unexpected sidewalk encounters. And yet, he took one slow step toward the cat. It didn't flinch. Instead, it tilted its head, watching him as if to say, "You're late." Elon chuckled quietly under his breath. "What are you looking at, little guy?" he muttered, glancing at his watch. He had a meeting in 10 minutes with a team in Texas about a Mars booster update. He didn't have time for this. Still, he crouched down and extended a hand. To his surprise, the cat stepped forward cautiously, then, without hesitation, rubbed its head against his fingers. It was an innocent gesture, but something in it cracked the day open. Just for a second, the weight lifted. The noise dimmed. A moment of quiet. A moment of connection. Elon stood, brushing the dust from his knees. "Not today," he said softly. "Go find someone who's got time for you." He turned and walked away. But the cat followed. Not too close. Just enough to stay in view. At first, Elon ignored it. Then he paused again. Looked back. It stopped, sitting down, gazing at him with those same unwavering eyes. A strange feeling began to rise in him, not annoyance, but something else. Curiosity. He walked. The cat followed. It stayed outside the doors as he entered the building, patiently watching them slide shut behind him. He forgot about it by lunchtime. Or tried to. But hours later, as he walked out of the building, the sky now tinted orange with the fading light of day, there it was again. Still sitting. Still waiting. Still watching. Elon froze. "You're still here," he murmured, almost amused. The cat meowed once, as if answering, "Of course." He crouched again. This time, the cat walked directly up to him, rubbing against his leg. Without thinking, Elon scooped it into his arms. It nestled against his chest and began to purr. A sound so small. But it echoed somewhere deep inside him. He hadn't realized how quiet his life had become. He hadn't realized how much he needed to feel, needed. And somehow, this cat, this fragile, persistent, uninvited companion, had known. As he drove home, the cat curled up in the passenger seat, eyes half closed, purring like it had always belonged there. That night, Elon skipped his usual evening calls. Instead, he watched the cat explore his living room, sniffing corners and jumping onto the couch like it had just claimed the house. And when it finally curled up beside him, resting its head on his lap, Elon felt something shift inside him. Peace. And not the kind that came from success or accomplishment. The kind that came from presence. From something small. Quiet. Real. He hadn't named the cat. Not yet. But already, it had named a space inside his heart he didn't know was empty. In a world that moves fast, sometimes it's the smallest pause that changes everything. Don't ignore the things that quietly call to you. They may be the turning points your soul's been waiting for. When was the last time you let something unexpected into your life? Maybe today is the day. The days that followed felt different. For a man who had engineered electric revolutions, launched rockets into orbit, and debated the ethics of AI on global stages, Elon found it surprisingly grounding to wake up and hear the soft patting of tiny paws across his floor. Every morning, the cat, still unnamed, would wait by the door as Elon slipped on his jacket for work. It would sit there, eyes half closed, as if performing its silent duty, sending him off, watching over the day he was about to face. And every evening, without fail, it would be there when he returned. The routine, though simple, became sacred. And in those quiet moments, between boardroom wars and breakthrough prototypes, Elon began to rediscover something he hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Presence. Trust. It was strange, he thought. How could a creature that didn't speak a word say so much? At night, as he stared out the window overlooking the city, the cat would curl up beside him, its breathing slow, rhythmic. Elon began talking out loud. At first just a comment or two, half laughing at himself. Then more. Thoughts he didn't share with anyone else. "I think I'm burning out," he whispered once. The cat looked up and blinked slowly, as if to say, "Then rest." Sometimes, it felt like the cat knew him better than he knew himself. But one evening, everything changed. Elon came home later than usual. The day had been brutal: delays in production, a failed rocket test, and a tense conversation about Neuralink's ethics. His head throbbed. His muscles ached. But when he stepped through the front door, something was wrong. The cat wasn't there. No gentle meow. No light patter of paws. No warm presence waiting in its usual spot. He froze. "Hey, where are you?" he called softly. Nothing. He checked every room. The kitchen. The bathroom. The closet. Behind the couch. Still nothing. A cold knot began to form in his chest. He rushed to the backyard, calling louder now. Still, no sound. Just silence. Thick, eerie silence. Until a faint meow. Distant. Weak. He followed the sound, his heart hammering. Down the side of the house. Toward the alley behind his property. And there, beneath the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, he saw it. The cat. Lying still. Blood on its leg. Fur tangled. Breathing shallow. Elon dropped to his knees. "No. No, 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 what happened?" he whispered, hands trembling as he lifted the fragile body into his arms. There were no questions now about meetings or deadlines. Only this moment. Only this life, fragile and soft against his chest. He drove like he'd never driven before. At the emergency vet clinic, they rushed the cat into surgery. Elon waited. And waited. The man who had kept calm in launch failures, who had stared down reporters, who had once faced bankruptcy, now sat alone in a cold plastic chair, staring at a closed door, praying for a single stray cat. It felt absurd. But it was real. More real than anything he had felt in years. Hours passed. Finally, the vet emerged. Tired, but smiling faintly. "He's a fighter," she said. "Fractured leg. Internal bruising. But he's going to make it." Elon exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. That night, he sat beside the recovery cage for hours, watching the tiny rise and fall of the cat's chest. There were wires. Bandages. 4 drips. And yet, when the cat opened its eyes and looked at him, Elon swore it smiled. As if to say, "Told you I'd wait for you." In the weeks that followed, Elon cleared his calendar more than usual. He brought work home. Sat beside the cat as it healed. He fed it by hand when it wouldn't eat. He carried it around the house when it couldn't walk. He slept beside it when the nights seemed long. And slowly, the cat recovered. Step by step. Day by day. And Elon changed. Not in grand gestures, but in the softening of his voice when speaking to his team. In the way he looked his assistants in the eye, truly listening. In the silence he allowed at meetings, moments to breathe, to think, to feel. Because now he knew. Even the strongest systems break. Even the brightest minds need rest. Even the busiest lives need love. It started with the calendar. Elon, a man known for time blocking his life down to the minute, began carving out space he couldn't justify with a spreadsheet. Not for a meeting. Not for a launch. But for something far more unpredictable. Moments. Moments of pause. Moments to sit still and simply be, often with a small cat purring at his side. The cat, now named Cosmo, Elon insisted it was only fitting, had become more than a companion. It had become his mirror. A reminder. A presence that asked for nothing, and somehow gave him everything. It was in these quiet hours that a question began forming in Elon's mind. What are we actually building? Not just at SpaceX. Not just at Tesla or Neuralink or X. But as people. He began bringing this question into his meetings, not in a grand, motivational way, but in soft interruptions. A moment of silence before a product pitch. A surprising pause after a financial report. And then he'd ask it. What's the human in this? At first, his teams were startled. Elon Musk, the man of metrics, margin, and mission, was suddenly concerned with feelings? Some thought it was a phase. But it wasn't. Because it wasn't about being soft. It was about being real. Humanity won't survive on Mars if we forget how to be human on Earth, he said one morning during a design review. Let's not build futures we don't know how to live in. It shifted the room. Product managers started thinking beyond speed and scale. Engineers began asking, will this make life better or just faster? Designers pushed for beauty, not just utility. One of his younger team members, eyes wide, approached Elon after a review and said, I've never seen you like this. Elon smiled, shrugging. Maybe I haven't been like this. And then, almost as an afterthought, he added, a cat changed that. The story spread quietly. The billionaire and his stray. The space visionary who'd been grounded by a four-legged friend. Some of the media laughed. Others turned it into headlines. But those close to Elon saw it for what it was. A return. To stillness. To empathy. To balance. One evening, at a private event for future-thinking entrepreneurs, Elon took the stage. The crowd expected talk of colonizing Mars, or AI consciousness, or zero-carbon cities. But instead, he said this. We spend so much time talking about disruption. About acceleration. About optimization. But what if the greatest innovation is rediscovering how to care? I used to think the goal was to make humanity a multi-planetary species. But now I believe the real mission is to make us worth multiplying. Silence. A deep, still kind of silence. Then applause. Not wild. Not explosive. Just honest. From people who, like Elon, had been sprinting so fast toward the future, they had forgotten to bring their hearts with them. Back at home, Cosmo remained his quiet anchor. The cat no longer limped. No longer bore the scars of its early days on the street. But it still had the same look in its eyes, that knowing gaze that had stopped Elon in his tracks the first day they met. He often wondered what would have happened if he hadn't stopped. If he had walked past. Ignored the little presence at the edge of the sidewalk. Would he have missed all of this? He didn't want to think about it. Because now, everything, from how he led his companies, to how he spent his mornings, to how he treated people who couldn't give him anything in return, had changed. And it hadn't started with a rocket. It had started with a meow. Years passed. The world moved on to faster, louder, more connected and yet more distracted than ever. And Elon Musk? He was still Elon. Still launching rockets. Still challenging systems. still dreaming bigger than most people dared to imagine. But anyone who spent time around him noticed a shift that was hard to define. He wasn't just thinking about what the future would look like anymore. He was thinking about who we would be in it. One afternoon, during a break between meetings, Elon sat in his garden at home, coffee in hand, sun low in the sky. Cosmo lay curled in the grass nearby, now older, slower, but still loyal. The cat had become a fixture in his life. A constant. He watched as Cosmo lifted its head and blinked at him. That same calm, unwavering stare. And suddenly, a thought came to Elon's mind. We build so much to escape death. But what if the point is to live deeply instead? He put his coffee down and sat beside Cosmo, stroking the soft fur. There were fewer photos of them together than you'd expect. Elon had never made their relationship public. It wasn't for the world. It was his. Quiet. Sacred. He thought back to the day they met. That morning when he was running late, carrying the world on his shoulders, and a small, wounded creature dared to interrupt his routine. He remembered how that interruption had become a rhythm. A rhythm that taught him to breathe. To pause. To feel. In the end, Cosmo didn't just give Elon companionship. He gave him a mirror. A way to remember that the greatest leaders are not only the boldest, but also the most present. That greatness isn't always an invention, it's also an empathy. And when Cosmo eventually passed, peacefully, curled up at Elon's feet, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everything they had shared. Full of everything that had changed. Elon buried him in the garden, under a tree where the sun always touched the ground. No monument. No plaque. Just a moment of stillness and gratitude. Because sometimes, the most profound transformations come not from the things we chase, but from the things we welcome. Even the small, quiet, unexpected ones. This was never just a story about a cat. It was a story about how a soul, no matter how small or scruffy, can reroute a life. How compassion, once sparked, can ignite purpose in the places success forgot. How a simple act of paying attention can change everything. You don't need a near-death experience, a billion-dollar company, or a global platform to change your life. You just need a moment. A moment to pause. To look. To listen. To let the unexpected in. So next time something small tugs at your heart, don't ignore it. It might just be the start of your greatest transformation. Slow down. Let life reach you. That's where the real magic lives.